angling your board to match the direction of the wave. Keep your head down when you do your backside snap. You almost want to look towards where your tail pad would be. If your board's completely vertical, 12 o'clock, look straight down to the bottom of the wave, and the nose of your board comes right down to where you're looking. Paddle hard, commit. If you kind of hesitate and you get sucked over the falls and it'll become the lip, way worse, that's how people get hurt, break their boards.
Do you struggle with your paddle power? Well, I can go months without surfing and roll up to pumping waves and surf 3-hour sessions multiple times a day, day after day after day by using the Basis Paddle Trainer. It was a total game changer for me, and it can be for you too. These things actually work, unlike elastic resistance bands. You can train your paddling anytime, anywhere, so you can catch more waves and have more fun. Just 10 to 20 minutes a couple times a week, and you're gonna be in insane paddle shape. Right? So remember, the key progression is more waves, and the key to more waves is more paddle power. Check it out at surfbasis.com. You're going to be stoked.
All right. Welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. Very excited. We got Ryan Croteau, otherwise known as Coach Crouton. He's he's a coach based out of Florida, but he does a lot of retreats in Guatemala, goes to the wave pools, California. He's a beach break barrel aficionado as well, and we're going to get into a ton of cool topics. I know that you just got back from doing a couple coaching sessions at the wave pools. We want to talk about power surfing, your tips for surfing beach breaks, because I know you surf a lot of beach breaks. What it's like surfing in Guatemala. I'd be curious to hear about that. I think that is probably one of the more, obviously all of Central America is known for surfing, but Guatemala is, definitely a more unique choice to go. And I'm sure that there's a reason why you decided to situate yourself there and talk about paddling as well. So thanks for joining, Ryan.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Ben. Stoked to be here.
Cool. Well, I know that you're kind of fresh off a trip to a wave pool. Why don't you tell us what was that like? What wave pool did you go to surf at?
Yeah. Recently I went and tried out the Palm Springs Surf Club in California. I have a couple clients that wanted to surf it, so it was kind of a win-win for me. I could take them there, coach them, and then I got to surf the pool as well. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's I've only surfed 2 wave pools now. I've done the Waco one a lot. I used to coach this little kid who was like, I don't know if you've ever seen him. His name's Zachy Taylor. He's like this 7-year-old that rides for Volcom and just does crazy airs on the Waco section. So I used to go to that one a lot with him when I was working with him, but just recently I checked out the Palm Springs ones. Like I spend a lot of time in Laguna Beach, California, and it's like a quick hour-and-a-half drive, so it's a nice escape, especially this time of the year in California. It's like May gray. So you go out to the desert and it's like 100 degrees and you can trunk it. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
but
nice.
the wave's fun. You have a couple options. There's like the rights and lefts, which kind of like bank off the wall and you surf across the pool, and then they have the A-frame setting where you can split the peak with someone. And then if you do the private sessions, you can do like the slabs and stuff, which I didn't get to do. That's definitely what I would have liked to do, but the level of surfers that I had there that I was working with were kind of more like beginner intermediate, so we just stuck with the rights and lefts. That way they knew which way they were going, and they didn't have to select waves and read them. It was just like, you're going left, go. So it's pretty cool.
Nice. Well, I was interviewing Matt Miola, and we were talking about practicing your airs, and he's like, oh man, he's like, dude, the next generation of surfers are going to be insane because practicing in a wave pool just allows you to get that same section over and over again. But he's talking about like elite level surfers, right? So I'm curious, what is your view on wave pools for your everyday surfer?
For your everyday surfer, I think it's really good for just getting the reps in, that the section's going to be the same. Like maybe it's just an everyday surfer who wants to kind of like race down the line and practice a cutback when the wave starts to like kind of die out. You could do that 7 times in a row and just try to like form out your cutback, or like even for someone who's still trying to like learn how to like take off on the wall, essentially like an angled drop, at like that beginner intermediate level. Like for me, I teach a lot of like how important it is like angling your board to match the direction of the wave. And sometimes that concept is like kind of hard for a beginner surfer to understand. But when you're in a wave pool and you literally have to like take off next to a wall, it's like you better get that angle right or else you're going into the wall, So like for super beginners like that, it's great. And then intermediate, like working the cutback over and over again, or one snap's really good. And then for the elite high level, like that, it's probably like 9 now, Zach Taylor kid, we'd go to Waco and just hit the air section like 400 times a day. And now he's like one of the best under 10 surfers in the world from doing that. He's a kid from Houston, Texas, that learned how to surf in the wave pool. And now he's like West Coast regional champion, national champion, and he's insane. I'm sure you've seen him, but yeah, it's like all levels. The wave pool is such a good tool that we have now. Obviously, I'm still like kind of old school with some of the teaching I do, so like I do really believe in ocean surfing. Like I don't think you should always be in the wave pool because you need to know how to paddle, and especially being a Florida guy, like born and raised in Florida, we have it the hardest, I feel like, or East Coasters, for waves. And so like you really learn growing up in Florida, for example, like you really learn how to read the ocean and the waves, like the smallest bumps, the shortest period, like 6 seconds, so it's like I do feel that that's super important as well.
For sure. I mean, that is like the most foundational skill of all of it, right? Like you could have good paddle power, you could like, know how to do a turn, but if you go out in the ocean, you don't know how to read a wave, you're not going to catch anything, right?
Yeah. That's like a whole nother learning curve for sure. But the pools are great. Sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Continue. The pools are just great for consistency.
Yeah.
Do the same snap like 10 times in a row. Catch 10 waves, same snap.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because actually I was talking with a friend and she's a beginner surfer and she was like, should I go to the wave pool? And I was like, I guess with any level of surfer, there's going to be its pros and its cons. But at that level, if you're a beginner surfer, like reading the ocean is probably the most important thing because you got to learn how to catch your own waves. But then the biggest struggle if you're a beginner surfer is like, you just don't get to catch that many waves, right? So going to a wave pool, you might get whatever, 10, how many waves in a session would you get at the Waco?
You're like,
Springs one.
You're guaranteed like, I think like 12 or 13 waves is what I got.
Yeah. And for a beginner surfer, that's like, could be like a month of surfing for some surfers, you know what I'm saying? Like, so that could be really good for a beginner surfer.
And most of the wave pools, they have levels, like they'll have like intermediate A-frame, for example, at Palm Springs, or at Waco, they have like beginner session where like a guy pushes you in, or intermediate session where it's like a little more steep, and then the public sessions, which are like more intermediate advanced. So there's always levels to choose from. You could go to the wave pool, and if you're a beginner, you could start at the beginner setting, and if it's too easy for you, then just book another session or like schedule it later in the day or something,
right,
for the higher level setting.
So do you think it's like just a obviously it's a supplement to surfing in the ocean, but it's like a way to just like really jumpstart your technique, right? If you're like really trying to hone down one specific aspect, one specific maneuver, then that's where you think it could really shine and have a huge impact.
Yeah, I think specifically for that, like honing in on one move or like a specific goal that you're targeting, you can go book the wave pools and surf like 6 rights and 6 lefts. You know what you're going to get, and then you can just really like try to dial it in. Yeah. With my guys that I brought there, I surfed with them just to kind of like, they were kind of at the level where they needed me to like tell them to paddle, like they could get up and go down the line and kind of do cut back, but like it's still nice to have the coach in the water, and then I hire a filmer to film everything, and then we analyze it after. So it's kind of like a combo deal,
right? Which
is nice.
And how is Waco versus Palm Springs?
I think Waco is like if you're going to do just the public session, I think I had an easier time surfing Waco. Like it was a little easier to read and figure out. Palm Springs kind of had like a little warble in it that would throw me off, and I was riding an epoxy and it was kind of like bouncy, but I wish that I would have had more sessions at Palm Springs. Like Waco, I went with a client that booked the privates, and I coached the kid, and we had like, I surfed every single wave that they created pretty much. Palm Springs, I only had a quick session and I didn't get like the full experience. I would like to go back and surf like all the different varieties of waves that they make. But I think they're both cool experiences, because Waco, you're like in the middle of Texas, and then it's just kind of a cool vibe, and then Palm Springs is like you're in the desert and there's mountains behind you and it's all hot and like, kind of like beach club vibe. So it's kind of, they're both really cool experiences.
Interesting. Okay, well let's like take it all to the complete opposite side of things, right? So like you talked about how, coming from the East Coast, coming from Florida, you thought that it was like really good training in terms of forcing you to learn how to read the ocean and just like analyze every single little ripple. And because that is one of the most essential skills. Obviously it is the most essential skill of all the skills as a surfer. So how else do you think it shaped and informed your approach to surfing? Yeah,
Florida can be humbling for sure, because sometimes you're like, when I was at Grom in Florida, I'd get stoked on like surfing like, 3 feet at 7 seconds straight onshore wind, and I would surf all day, like skip school for it, because we don't really have waves all the time. You know, I moved to California when I was 16 and got kind of spoiled, but like just my buddies that lived in California were like, I'm not surfing that. I'm like, what? We're out there. Let's go surf, you know? Like,
Hmm.
but I think it's special growing up in Florida. I'm glad that I kind of split my youth like both coasts, you know? But I think Florida really trains you to like see things differently, you know? Like being a surfer in Florida, I feel, or East Coast surfer, but especially Florida just because it's even smaller waves, I feel like, than like New York and New Jersey and North Carolina. I have to like learn how to read all those little ripples, you know, like little chops to like chip into the wave. I feel like Florida surfers, like small wave contests, you got to paddle way harder because you got to get up, paddle hard to get up early to start like getting down the line and like surfing the wave, you know? Like paddling is super important for being an East Coast surfer, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. I sometimes wonder about that because, I'm based in New York and it's like the waves here, it definitely pumps, but then because it's colder, you're less likely to go out when it's small. Whereas in Florida, you'll go out when it's small because it's not as
Hmm.
cold, So
Yeah,
but I
that's a
guess,
good
yeah,
point. Because
like,
like East Coast surfers have their thing, but if it's like 3 feet straight on shore, wind chop, and you're in the Northeast in the winter, you're probably gonna say no. But if it's Florida in December, you're still like where I'm from, you wear a wetsuit top pretty much all
yeah,
winter, maybe a spring suit because I'm from Southeast Florida.
yeah.
um, you're out there. You know, it's fun. Like it's fun to surf like blown out wind chop. For some reason I have more fun to this day. I'm 31 years old, and like I said, I spent like 12 years in California. I have more fun surfing like a 3-4 foot wind chop day in like blue warm water in Florida than I do like good lowers.
Really?
Yeah, I have no
Explain
clue.
that
It's
to me.
just
That's insane.
I don't know. It's just warm. There's nobody out, you know, and
Yeah.
it's I'm like interested in learning how to read like no, well, I know how to read those waves, but like just weird sections, you know, like it's
Mhm.
just kind of more of a game. Like a perfect wave is a perfect wave, but
Yeah.
like a difficult weird wave is kind of more like a challenge, you know. It's fun
Mm.
to like in Florida, you literally like be on a peak here and you'll have to like hop over to another peak and like rebound off it to come back left and hit it again. Like it's just I don't know, it's fun. I like it.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. I mean, for me, because yeah, it's way more unpredictable. But sometimes, I guess, because I live out here, I'm like, I just want that perfect machine type wave. But
Yeah.
yeah, but I have a buddy who loves beach breaks as well, and he's like, he loves it because it forces him not to think, because he's just like, I'm just reacting to what I have in front of me, and just trying to just like really sink in with the ocean, as
Yeah.
opposed to like really trying to predict it. And okay, I'm always going to be, there's going to be this one section here and it's going to get soft here and all that when you're like surfing a point or whatever.
Yeah, I love beach breaks for that reason too, and I think that's like part of the Florida man in me, you know,
Yeah.
because like if you surf like for example lowers, you don't have any rips, you know, there's no beach breaks, you know, when there's a sandbar, a high spot, and a low, like a deep spot, there's going to be a rip current that's going to like blow out and it's going to like form like in a certain direction, and then I like to kind of like I thrive in beach breaks if it's even semi crowded because I know how to navigate those rips and all the currents and like find the right pockets, you know, like the clean
Mm.
spots. That's like the key in surfing in a beach break. Like if a rip blows out and kind of like swings to the south, then you kind of like hang on the north side of the rip and it will make like a nice left, you know?
Mm.
Stuff like that I feel like is really you learn in Florida. Like I would never have learned that surfing lowers my whole life because it's a cobblestone reef bottom and
Right.
it breaks in the same spot every time. I don't have to know that, you know?
Yeah,
So
for sure. Yeah, when I interviewed Zeke Lau, he talked about that was his biggest struggle coming from Hawaii, and he would go and he had to surf, beach breaks in Portugal, and he was like, I didn't even
mhm.
know how to surf them. Like it was a real struggle for him.
Yeah.
And it was only working with a coach when he was able to like, fine tune and adjust his strategy. So, what tips would you give to people that are surfing beach breaks? How what advice would you give them?
I really like to analyze the lineup before I paddle out. I feel like a lot of people, like newer surfers especially, you go on a surf trip, you're all fired up, grab your board, wax it up, and just run out. Like I like to kind of like start the morning with a coffee on the beach, look left, right, see where like the rips are in certain spots. Like you get to a certain level when you really look at the ocean a lot and you've been surfing for a long time where you're like, oh, the sandbar's there, you know? And if there's a deep spot there, that's the channel. I'm going to paddle out there. If you read the ocean and spend time just watching it, you start to kind of like see those highs and lows in the beach break and the sandbar, and a high spot, that's a sandbar, that's going to be where the wave's at, and a low spot where it's deep, that's going to be where it's like a good entry point to paddle out, like the keyhole. I think looking at the waves when you're surfing and before you paddle out is important. And one thing that this is kind of just like a weird theory that I realized like the past 6 months coaching people in Guatemala, because it's a lot of beach breaks there, like the whole country is beach breaks, is I noticed myself when I miss a wave or maybe I'm like a little too far in and I duck dive it, I always look over and I watch the back of the wave. And I noticed like 100% of the people that I'm coaching at their level, nobody does that. And it's kind of like a weird thing, but like, I mean, maybe it's a weird theory, it's just me, but I always watch the back of the wave because I missed it. I was in the wrong spot and I want to watch it and see which way that it peeled. And every wave when it breaks leaves like a trail of white water, like that kind of like frothy latte looking foam behind it. And it literally is a map to what just happened on that wave and what might happen again. So if you use that knowledge and you just keep it in your brain, like that wave broke here, I'm going to go a little bit past that whitewater foam area. Hopefully it happens again. A lot of times it does. I'm a big believer in watching the back of the wave. Yeah. When you miss a wave.
No.
And I feel like no one really talks about that or touches on it, but it's super important for like learning how to understand how the waves in the ocean work.
For sure, right? So much of reading waves is like this A/B testing where you like see a wave in front of you and you think you're, okay, am I in the good spot? Is that a good wave? And then, but if you just like duck dive it, you don't know whether your hypothesis is true unless you actually catch it, right? And so what you're talking about, looking over the back of it, is your way to test your theory. Okay, it looks like a good wave, and then you see it from the back and you're like, okay, that was a good wave, and then that confirms like your analysis was correct.
Especially when you're like newer to surfing, there's a lot of people will paddle for a wave and they'll hesitate and they'll think it's too steep or they're in too deep and they'll pull out. But if they just don't watch it and then go back out for the next one, but if you watch it, you see like, oh man, that wave would have been really good. I should have gone, because you can see it peeling. And I think the back part of the wave, the white water trail that the wave leaves, is like a good indication on what's to come.
For sure. Anything else that pops to mind? I mean, you also, you mentioned Guatemala. I'm assuming that you chose Guatemala because you feel like, it's a really good spot for coaching. Tell us a little bit more about that, choosing to, go with beach breaks instead of a place with like, a little bit more structure.
For me personally, Guatemala is one of my places that I frequently go to for surf, and I bring clients there, and it's mostly just because it's, one, like you said, I like beach breaks, and two, I don't like crowds. So Guatemala is like, when you think of going on a surf trip in Central America, you probably know less than 5 people that have gone and been like, I'm going to Guatemala to surf, So yeah, it's not crowded. I like that I have space to work with my people versus if I were to go to El Salvador, then I've got to sit, kind of on the shoulder, locals at the top of the point. I got to deal with all that. And I think, like I said, beach breaks are kind of humbling. The wave in Guatemala at certain times of the year is like a mellow, nice beach break, and I have a lot of space and I can get a lot of work done with people. And it's a great country too. I actually would have probably never even gone there, but I went there the first time when I was 18, which was like 12 years ago, because I was on the North Shore, Hawaii at the time, and I met this lady, and she was a photographer. She still goes to North Shore and shoots photos. Her name's Luz, and she was Guatemalan, and she showed me some pictures on her computer. I was like, where is that? She's like, that's my home country, Guatemala. And I was like, where is everyone? It was like empty, perfect waves. And she's like, there's no one to shoot. I just shoot the empty waves. And I was like, can I go? Can I go there? And she was like, yeah, I come. She invited me, and then I went down with a buddy, and then I think I literally went pretty much every year since then. And now I'm pretty established there. Like, I have some of my best friends are Guatemalan, my girlfriend's Guatemalan, so I spend a lot of time there. Yeah, I really like it.
It does sound really nice. Yeah, and I was thinking about this the other day, actually. I was like, from a wave count perspective, I'm like, do you get a higher wave count surfing a perfect point with a bunch of people out? Or actually surfing at a beach break where there's more opportunities, but it's just a little bit messier and you're kind of, there's a little bit more of a gamble. What's your opinion? I mean, you love beach breaks, so you're like, I pick beach breaks all day.
Yeah, for me, I think I definitely get more waves at a beach break than a point. I like point breaks. I just feel like surfing's gotten pretty crowded, and I don't like to like, catch a wave and then have to like paddle battle and like deal with all that like extra energy. I'd rather just kind of like go down the beach, do my thing. Like I said, I'd rather surf 3-foot wind chop in Florida than like 4-foot, 5-foot lowers.
Yeah, for
Me
sure.
yeah, wave count for sure. Like you get wave count way higher.
Right.
I'll get my wave count way higher surfing a beach break in Florida or Guatemala than sitting
For
in the
sure.
pack at lowers or uppers or something.
Yeah, there is so much of this, like, it's a cost benefit, and I think everybody should try to experience both types of waves. But I was in El Salvador, and I was with a friend. She was a beginner surfer, and she lives in Rockaway as well. And
Mhm.
she was like, I thought I would get more waves and I'd have a better time, but it was more of a struggle just because like there's just more crowd. You have a concentrated takeoff spot, right? Whereas if you're at Rockaway or if you're at some beach break, you can just find your own peak and you can sit on that
Mhm.
peak, especially as a beginner too, because the crowd factor is such a big thing if you're a beginner surfer, right? Like you don't want to drop in on people, you want to be conscious of people, and you get really in your head as a beginner surfer about like, is this even the right wave? Am I going to drop in on somebody? So then surfing at a beach break, you can kind of just find your own spot and it can be a lot more chill, right? And so I think
Yeah.
that really does kind of go to the favor of beach breaks at certain levels.
Yeah, I feel like most beginners these days they don't really have like a good sense of etiquette, you know? So when you go to a point break, you're like, well, that guy just caught a wave. He's really good, but why is he paddling around me and catching another one? And then you're kind of like your level of surfing doesn't really you don't really want to go to the top of the point where it's the steepest, and you'd rather kind of hang on the shoulder on the edge, but then you have that fear if I go for this wave is someone deeper coming down the line, you know? And they're always kind of like on edge. So yeah, I really think like beach breaks are good way for beginner and intermediate surfers to like understand and learn and get their wave count up, but obviously not when it's too big. Like in Guatemala, for example, it's nice because if it does get too big, I could just drive 3 hours and I'm in El Salvador, which is
Right.
another nice perk of being there. But
Right.
yeah, it just depends on the swell, really.
Yeah.
I don't want to take someone out when it's like 5, 6 foot top to
Right.
bottom barreling beach breaks, but if it's like 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and they're up for it, then it's really nice.
Right, right. But you love barreling beach breaks too, though, right? I mean, that must be part of the reason why you like you like it down there.
Yeah, for me personally, I love barreling beach breaks. Like I spent a good bit of time in Puerto Escondido, Guatemala, then to Pascuales. Like all those heavy beach breaks are definitely something that I like to do. But yeah, I know it's not for everyone, but for me personally, I really enjoy it. I like to spread out, pick my peak, kind of
Yeah,
wait my turn.
yeah. I've surfed Pascuales before. It's a freaking heavy wave.
Yeah. Did you
It is a
paddle
sick
or
wave
did
though.
you step off on the
I
ski?
was I was paddling. I was not doing any step offs, but yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's one thing that I haven't done down there that I've really wanted to do, is just go on like a really perfect like swell and just do the step off thing with a buddy or something to make it a little more affordable, but
yeah.
it's pretty expensive.
I know that people were doing that. I wasn't sure if people were still doing that. I remember there was that article in the Surfers Journal, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something, but people were like talking about doing the step offs. I didn't see it when I was there, but
Hmm.
it does look kind of like a little cheat code to just get a ton of barrels, you know?
Yeah, they don't really do it at like the main peak, like where you stay, if you stayed like right in front, but they kind of go down to the south. Down there, you'll
Yeah.
see like some skis sometimes, and yeah, I got some buddies that get insane waves going down there just 2 or 3 days, step off 2 days, and they get like, you're gonna get 30 barrels.
Oh my God.
You would never get 30 barrels just paddling there for a month.
Oh my
It's
God.
kind
That
of
sounds
worth its weight in
insane.
gold. You pay $800 and you get like 20 barrels a day.
What? Oh my
Yeah.
God. Damn.
Yeah,
All
I gotta
right.
do it.
Yeah.
We gotta go together.
That sounds so fun. That
400
sounds,
each.
dude, done in.
Yeah.
That's insane, dude. Well, why don't we talk a little bit more about barrel riding? I mean, what are your tips for getting tubed?
Um, Paddle hard, commit,
Yeah,
paddle hard, commit,
and have a jet
and
ski like a step off. That's the
yeah,
real biggest tip, right?
yeah. Then you don't need to paddle. Just
Yeah,
go. No, I like back to the beginning of this, like being able to see the wave and which wave you want to go for ahead of time allows you extra time to paddle, which allows you to get into the wave and get to your feet so that you can ride the barrel. So always be alert, analyzing the sets where they're shifting, get into the wave early, paddle hard, commit. There's obviously when a wave's top to bottom, people get that like fear and they want to pull back, but I mean, you've maybe heard it before and it's totally true. Like the safest place to be is in the barrel when you're on like a bigger wave. When you're inside the barrel, sometimes the bottom just drops out and like spits you out the back. It's way easier. But if you like kind of hesitate and you get sucked over the falls and become the lip, way worse. That's how people like get hurt, break their boards. Or if you straighten out, then you have the lip coming down behind you. So it's the commitment of just drawing your line and pulling in is super important. And then for me, I really like to ride quads when I'm surfing barrels. So like if it's a beach break or even like a reef break, for me, like when you're inside the barrel, behind you is the foam ball, and it's just kind of like churning and like pushing you out. I just feel whenever I have 4 fins, like digging into that foam ball, it like locks in and just like kind of like escorts you out of the tube. As where the thruster gets like a little more like wiry and squirrely in there and you kind of lose it. But like I really like the feeling of like the 4 fins like kind of like clawing into the foam ball and it just pushes, So whenever I'm surfing like good fast down the line barrels, beach breaks, I say, unless I have like broken boards or something and I don't have like the best quiver, but I'm like 95% riding a quad. Yeah.
And what are your tips for people to, because you talked about the importance of commitment. And I think that that's probably one of the things that people struggle with, especially when it's barreling, because it's like scary for people, especially if it's pumping and macking. You talked about surfing Puerto Escondido. So I'm, that wave's insane. Like Pascuales, super gnarly wave. Like, what are your tips for people for managing fear? And I think this applies not just to barrel riding, but even if you're a beginner surfer and you're like, I'm scared of a 3-foot wave or a 4-foot wave, like what's your advice there?
Yeah, I think it's obviously super important to know your limits, like I know my limits and I don't, I'm not going to do something that's like extremely unsafe. But I also feel like, know your limits, but then also just kind of like you can paddle out and like take your time. Sometimes I'll paddle out like at Puerto, for example, and I won't catch a wave for like an hour and a half. I'll wait. I'm not gonna go in the closeout. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to break my new like 7.8 that was like $700. Like I'm like a selective surfer. Like I'm patient. I take my time and I wait for the good wave. And then another thing to remember is like everyone's scared. Like if you watch interviews of like Mark Healy or like Shane Dorian or any of the best guys like Laird Hamilton, big wave surfers, like they're all scared, So like if we're scared, if I'm scared of like a 10-foot, 20-foot wave, then they're probably scared of like a 30-foot wave. It's okay for you to be scared of like your first 8-foot wave, So like back to the beginning, always analyze the lineup, have your coffee, sit there, don't rush out there, make sure your gear is prepped, watch the waves, paddle out, sit on the shoulder for a little bit, watch other guys fall, take your time, And then one thing that I used to do when I was a kid is I would like be scared and I would like sit on the shoulder and watch a guy just like eat it, And then I'd be like, I'd count how long he was underwater, I'd be like, this is when I'm like 12, I'd be like, to 4 seconds, that's not that bad, It seems in your mind like when you're underwater that like the time is way more intense, but if you watch someone fall and then the time they pop up, it's pretty rare that it's over 10 seconds. And like I'd say, 100% of people watching this podcast can probably just go and hold their breath for 10 seconds. But it's once you start like turning on that panic mode underwater and you start to scramble and scratch to the surface and like you just did a flip and everything's black, then your mind plays tricks on you that you've been underwater for like a minute, Very rare that you're gonna take off and be underwater for a minute.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw a video I posted on Instagram recently, but it's like one of my favorite tricks for being held down, surfing bigger surf is like same concept, like take your mind off time. So I don't know who told me this, but I've always applied it. Like whenever I'm like, even if I'm like about to ditch my board on a big cleanup set or I just wiped out inside a tube, is I take my mind off time when I'm underwater. I try to relax and I, instead of thinking like about seconds and time intervals, I count the alphabet in my mind. So like after you do that, if you try it out, you'll be underwater and you'll be like, oh my God, I was just underwater for 20 seconds. But you come up and you're actually on E, A, B, C, D, E. You're really like, oh, like it kind of tricks your mind into realizing like it's actually not that bad. I only made it to D, but I thought in my head I was underwater for 35 seconds,
Yeah.
So whenever I'm underwater, I kind of like ball up and I just relax and kind of like let the wave take me and float. And I just think I do the alphabet. Hey, I sing my ABCs. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
That sounds way
Yeah.
more
Try
chill
it,
than like,
man.
oh, I've been underwater for 20 seconds. Yeah, I'll have to
Yeah.
try. I'll have to try the alphabet style.
Yeah.
It's
Everyone's
funny.
gonna be
Go
all zen underwater, just like little cannonball saying your ABCs.
Yeah,
You're good.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're just like a little baby, just
Yeah.
practicing your ABCs. It's perfect.
Yep.
That's interesting because I remember Shane Dorian talked about how his strategy when he's taking one on the head is he actually like tries to imagine doing the most boring thing possible. So he'll like visualize he's like organizing his gear for going on a bow hunt. So he'll be like, all right, I got one arrow, I got two arrow. Oh, did I bring the, this or that? And he's just like organizing his gear closet, like something super tedious. And then that's the
Yeah.
way, but it's very similar to what you said, very similar.
Yeah. Yeah. It works for sure. Just take your mind off time, whatever it is. It's like
Yeah.
ABCs, bow hunting prep. The something boring. Yeah, I like that too. That theory. It's kind of like
Yeah.
reminds me of when I do ice baths. Like I absolutely hate ice baths, but
Mm.
sometimes I just get kind of like doing, friend has on our event or something like do the ice bath, and I
Yeah.
just get in it and I literally just imagine myself sitting in a hot tub, and it weirdly kind of makes it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. One of your goals you said recently was less airs, more power.
Mm.
So it sounds like you're focused more on your rail surfing right now and your power surfing. So like what cues or what drills are you giving yourself or do you give your clients when you're trying to work on, your power surfing?
Yeah, for me personally, I just feel like power surfing's kind of dying, So I think I like posted that and like I posted a clip of me doing like a power turn or something. But yeah, I feel like most kids under 16 now, as soon as they're born, they're doing air reverses. So I think it's important to work on power surfing just to keep it alive. Like who knows what the future of surfing will look like in 20 years with the stuff that like Felipe and Italo and Gabe, like these guys are all doing. Um, so I think, yeah, just like keeping the fins in the water sometimes it's good to just like keep surfing core alive. I really like watching like, old school AI or like Mark Occhilupo just like for power surfing. And I was always like growing up, I was always like a really tiny kid, so I used to do like errors all the time, but like in the past like 10 years or whatever, I kind of like, I was like a late bloomer. Like I finally kind of like grew up and like bulked up a little bit. So now I'm just like really loving like trying to throw as much spray as possible and like keeping the fins and the rail in the water. Um, but as far as like teaching power surfing, I feel like that's more, for a level of like advanced surfers. Like if I'm coaching like a kid who competes or something, I'll just kind of like drill it in his mind. Like don't forget, like
Mm.
if the air section's like a little bit foamy and soft and doesn't have like a crazy lip, like go for a power snap or like a layback, And
Mhm.
yeah, I just think it's pretty important. And I don't know. I feel like back in the day, like when I started surfing, like kids just rode longer boards, so it was a bit harder for us to like do arrows. Like my first surfboard, I was like 7, and I was like, I don't know, 80 pounds, but I was riding like a 510.
Mhm.
Kids these days when they're 8, they got like little custom like 4.9s and stuff, and it makes it a lot easier to like flick an air reverse and stuff. So I kind of sometimes go a little maybe too old school approach, but I feel like it's really good for like kids, especially like if they're surfing very like wiggly and loose, to just like put them on like a board with like 5 more inches, just to like form out, instead
Mhm.
of like being so spastic and like racing down the line for the air. I feel like if you go back in time almost and like put a kid on like a longer board and make him do like a bottom turn and throttle out his cutbacks, it's like it's gonna make your style way better. And I think like even non-kids, like adults, like a lot of the people I coach, like everyone's goal when they do their first, surf lesson and then they buy their first hardboard, it's like everyone's goal is like get to the smallest board possible. I want to look cool. I
Right.
want to I want to be in the lineup on a shortboard because that's what all the best guys do and it looks cool. But it's like really if you kind of take your time and go from one board to the next nice and slow and kind of stay a little longer boards, your surfing's going to be way better and you're going to surpass maybe the guy or girl that started at the same time as you because you're not rushing. And so for power surfing, I feel like if you stay on those longer boards, it's gonna kind of force you to do those kind of power type of maneuvers versus like flicking a little blow tail reverse,
For
So
sure. I remember they were talking about Craig Anderson, and the reason why his style is so good is because apparently his dad made him ride like this old like single fin 7.0 for something like that when he was a kid until he was like, what, I don't know, 16. I'm making a number up.
hmm
But yeah, apparently that was like a key component to why his style got so good, is because he just had to surf longer boards like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was born in 93 and I think like and my dad didn't even really surf, but I think like a lot of the dads back in that time, like 93, early 2000s, like 90s, 2000s, they made their kids do that. I feel like parents these days with the kids that are doing all the contests every weekend, they're not really doing that anymore. That's where I feel like you said, was it Craig Anderson? Like dads back in the day were like a little more harsh, like ride this long board and form out your turns. You know what I mean?
So earlier we were talking about, the importance of paddle power, and I know you got a chance to try the Basis paddle trainer. Richie had one. So, what were your thoughts? I'm curious.
Yeah, Richie, our buddy, our mutual friend, Richie, classic guy. He showed up with the Basis paddle trainer down in Guatemala one day and was like, I had some clients in town. They tried it. It worked great. I tried it. I thought it was super cool. I really liked how you could adjust the intensity. Like if you go to the gym, you put the pin in, lightweight, heavyweight, so it has that versatility to adjust the intensity based off of your arm strength. It's cool that you designed it like that because if you put a little kid on it, obviously it needs to be adjusted for if I do it. You know what I mean? But I think it's a great tool for, I'd say, like most of my clients. Like I do a lot of beginner stuff, intermediate stuff, and most of the people that come surf with me, they're doing like 4 surf trips a year. Like I surfed this morning. I took this guy down to San Onofre. It's a classic, longboard, easy wave, and it breaks pretty far out. And he got pretty gassed out, but he lives in Chicago. He came down, surfed with me in Guatemala, and then that was like February, and now we're in May. The last time he surfed was February, so he's been in Chicago the whole time working, getting saved up to do his next surf trip. So I feel like those gaps in between for those type of people, the paddle trainer is going to be super effective. Or even like the weekend warriors, a lot of people surf on the weekends. They work 9 to 5. It's hard to get down to the beach after work. Hit the paddle trainer, keeps you consistent. So I think for people like that, it's super good. Luckily for us, we get to surfing is that's kind of our life. So we get to just get in the ocean and surf every day. And sometimes I forget that as a surf coach because that's just my life, but I forget that a lot of the average surfers, they don't have those opportunities like we do. And we're obviously so blessed to be able to do that. But a lot of people don't. So this paddle trainer that you created is genius for people like that. It's really good.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I'm not blessed to be able to surf every day. Living in New York, man, it is. I have a bunch of friends in Rockaway that they're like, dude, I haven't surfed in a month. Just the way the East Coast works with the inconsistent swell and the cold. It's rough, and so I'm not one of those people that gets to surf every day, and so. Creating this thing was literally because I wanted to solve the problem for myself. I'd roll up on surf trips and I'd just get smoked because I hadn't been able to surf. And then I roll up and, swell's pumping and there was no way for me to roll up and actually be in shape. And so that's the reason why I created it. So it's very gratifying to hear that you felt it, like you gave it its the badge of approval, and you think it would be a good training device. Because it's funny because we were talking about beach breaks, right? And I think you're right. And, when I come back to this more, like, surfing at like an uncrowded beach break in Guatemala, you're probably definitely going to get more waves than if you're surfing like a crowded point where there's a defined peak and takeoff and, the locals are gnarly and all that. But I experienced this for myself because I went down to Costa Rica a couple of weeks ago, and the swell was pumping, but it was too big for the spot that I was surfing at. Right. And it was beach break. Dude, I had to paddle so much. That is the one downside of beach breaks, is you got to do I feel like a way more paddling, especially because it was like this swell was too big, and it broke up, it messed up all the sandbars. But I was probably doing like 20-30 duck dives to make it out every single time, and so that is the one thing about beach breaks, the one downside of them. But then you get more waves and you get more peaks and you get that, so it's like a little pro and a con. But basically I went from not surfing for 2 months because I was getting ready to ship this thing to than rolling down there for 2 weeks. And luckily I was training. Otherwise I would have just gotten completely smoked. That's for sure. That is for sure.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Like exactly for that reason. If I took I don't think I've ever taken a 2-month break from surfing in my life unless I got injured. Like I had a pretty bad injury like a year and a half ago. But other than that, I've never had to experience that. But for the people that do have those long gaps in between sessions, then I think it's like a great thing to have in your house, in your quiver, and just like train at least 3 times a week paddling, because surfing without paddling, you can't surf.
Right.
It's that simple. Paddling is probably the most important tool in your toolbox to be a surfer.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like if I, for example, when I'd go to Porto, a lot of times I'd go down to Barra de la Cruz, and when the tide drops, the wave gets really good. It starts barreling, but the current starts ripping around the edge of the point. And I thrive in those conditions because I like to paddle. Like I paddle a lot. Florida, you sometimes could, and growing up in Florida, you could paddle at one spot in an hour, you'd be a mile down the beach. Wow. So like growing up in that, you can hang on the top of the point, while everyone else that, isn't trained like that, they just get blown down and it's hard for them to get back up, So if you can build that up over time with the paddle trainer outside of the ocean, then it's super beneficial.
Yeah, it would be like an advantage. And that's sick to hear. Well, I got a couple closing questions that I wanted to ask you. So first one is, have you ever had, I think you touched on one of them, but have you ever had any light bulb moments with boards or fins or anything? You mentioned the quad, but anything else that comes to mind?
I have surfed competitively my whole life, ridden pretty traditional shortboards, but I picked up a used board from a surfboard broker. Have you heard of them? They're down in Carlsbad. They ship worldwide. But I found this board. It was an asymmetrical board shaped by this guy called Donald Brink.
Yeah.
And I think it was for one of the Godowskis or something, because it had like one of those like positive vibe warrior stickers on it. It just felt good under my arm. And I was kind of like anti-asym for a while. Like, oh, that's just a hipster fad. It's not even real. Best board I've ever had.
Really?
And it was, all it said on the bottom didn't even have dimensions. It just felt good. It felt nice. It said left foot forward. So it was a regular foot. And I was like, I'm trying this thing. And I've tried my hardest. I think I've had the board for like 3 years. And I'll ride it like sometimes. But at Barra de la Cruz, it was the best. I feel like the best I've ever surfed. Like it felt so good, and it kind of blew my mind.
Wow.
And I really wanted to get it copied, so I hit the guy up. I knew someone who kind of knew the guy, Donald Brink, and I was like, hey man, I found this board. I think he actually told me it was one of his personal boards. And I was like, can I get it copied? I want to make another one. He was like, yeah, sure, $1,500. I was like, oh, I don't think I can do it. I'm like, wait, look at this clip of me surfing it. Can you hook me up a little bit? He was like, yeah, $1,500. I was like, oh my God. I don't know if I can justify it, but if he does ever see this and knows that I just shouted out that board being the best board of my life, then maybe 50% off. But yeah, that board blew my mind. I still have it. It's like sunburnt yellow. I've patched dings with solar res over and over again just to try to keep it alive, and it still works. And I ride it like only on like a point break when the waves are good, but I just keep it on ice.
Wow.
And it looks like a board that's like 8 years old. Like it's yellow from the sun,
Yeah. That's
but it works.
That's sick.
So good.
That's sick. Wow. Yeah. I'm so curious what is the outline more of like a, because Donald's boards are insane, like I interviewed him as well, and he gets super trippy. Did? Yeah, he gets super trippy with his design. So it could be like almost anything, like, but what was the outline like?
Yeah, I've never met the guy, but it was kind of trippy. It was actually like, I always thought, like I said, I knew nothing about asyms until I wrote it. I always thought that on one side they had like a twin fin, and then the other side they had like a quad. Right. But this board had an asymmetrical tail, like the one side was longer than the other, but it had 3 fins. It was a thruster. And I always thought asyms could go right and left. And if he's ever watching this, correct me if I'm wrong, I always thought asyms could go one direction. But this board goes right and left, and it has a thruster. So I would ride it as a regular thruster, and then sometimes I would ride it as a 2+1, twin fin with the mini trailer. And it surfs insane backside, and it surfs insane front side. It's just the tail is like, like that. Right. I'll try to send you find a picture of it or like a clip of it if you can like put it in here. So that way you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. But yeah, it was an insane board.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Any light bulb moments that you've had when it comes to technique?
Light bulb moments. Keep your head down on your backside snap.
Mm.
Yeah, someone told me that. I think when I was like 15 or 16, when I moved from Florida, I moved to Newport Beach, and it was a buddy of mine, super good surfer, used to do the QS. His name was Victor Doan, and he always, I think when you grow up in Florida, you're always kind of like reading the wave and like looking down the line to the next section. So when I would do my backside snap, I would look down the line, and I noticed it in photos. He called me out on it. He was like, Ryan, keep your head down when you do your backside snap. And so like when you do your backside snap, you almost want to look towards like where your tail pad would be. Like if your board's completely vertical, 12 o'clock, look straight down to the bottom of the wave, and the nose of your board comes right down to where you're looking. And yeah, I learned that at like 16, and it blew my mind. Made my backside surfing like way better. And I still see a lot of kids today doing the mistake that I used to make, where you do your snap and you look over your shoulder and then you kind of catch that outside rail and then fall over. Yeah. But as soon as you just really train your brain to keep your head down, it makes your board just like go way more vertical and straight back down way faster. And then by the time it comes down, then you can start to like open up your eyes and shoulders and start to like worry about the next section. But I think that's definitely a thing that, you know, people that aren't from Florida don't have to like worry about. Like if you surf lowers or California or some really good waves, and, you know, Hawaii, Australia, reef breaks, like you kind of know what the wave's going to do. In Florida, you're always kind of like looking down the line, trying to figure out what's next. So that was like a huge light bulb moment for me, and I've applied it to, I've taught tons of people that, watched it change their game, change my game, and it just makes your backside surfing way better.
Nice. I love it. All right. What is your intention when you go for a surf?
I feel like lately, honestly, my intention has just been like surf to stay alive, like surf to stay in shape, you know? Like I've surfed a bunch of good waves. I love surfing, but lately I just feel like I'm only 31, but like I really want to be surfing when I'm 80, you know? Like I'd like to surf till the day I die. And I feel like if you're not surfing like weekly or every day, your body's not being formed to like being molded into that, you know, that thing. Like when you see a guy that's surfing when he's 80, he surfs every day or as much as he can, or she, you know. So lately in Guatemala, I've been like swimming, paddling the current, and it's kind of just like, you know, I've gotten so many good waves out there, but I'm just like, I just want to be moving, you know, like moving in the ocean. I like to just kind of like stay in shape. And typically that's not my goal. Like growing up surfing competitions and traveling, looking for waves, my goal's always been to like score the hardest, you know, surf my best, beat my competitors. But lately I've just been like, I just want to surf and stay in shape, you know, and it's nice.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, I think that covers it. Any last plugs for you? Anything you want to chat about?
Nothing really off the top of my head. I enjoyed being here, and it was nice to hang for a little bit and do this interview, and I appreciate you for having me. And then if anyone's seeing this and they want to join me in Guatemala or do some coaching or something, just send me an email.
Cool. And it's they can find you. Your Instagram is Coach Croteau. You have a YouTube channel as well. Is it Coach Croteau as well?
Coach Croteau Instagram. That's like the best way to see my stuff. Like I don't really post on YouTube too much. Maybe I should more, but yeah, I think I have my email and like my Instagram contact or something like that. That's like the best way to reach out to me and see where I'm at or what we can do, you know, meet somewhere, wave pool, go somewhere, surf, come down to Guatemala, check it out. Always in California and Florida, going back and forth. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Coach.
Well, it was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
All right.